So during the international break of the PWHL, we're going to catch up on what's been going on in general. No real games to talk about, but definitely some rivalries. That's what's coming up next on the PWHL Puck Drop podcast. Welcome on in.
It's time for the PWHL Puck Drop podcast.
All right, welcome in. And today I have a very special guest joining me, and I'm so happy to welcome Christopher Sinclair. He is a writer for the Hockey News, the women's hockey section, and also has his own podcast, The Rinkside Rundown. Welcome on in, Christopher.
Thank you so much for having me, Christopher. It sounds so formal. I'm not used to it. It's great. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. This has been a long time coming, and be able to connect with you, chat some rivalry series, some PWHL. Super stoked about this.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate you coming in and lending us all your knowledge of all things women's hockey. And yeah, if it's okay, I'd like to ask just a little bit about your background, how you got started with the podcast. I know you had your own website for a little bit and then got to write for the Hockey News as well.
Yeah, it's I always find it cliched to say what I'm about to say, so forgive me when I say it, but it was literally, when the league was announced, the teams were announced, I knew in my heart that I needed to celebrate this city, to celebrate women's hockey. Women's hockey has been something that unfortunately I've only been able to watch, the international competition, specifically the Olympics. And when you have to wait so long between games, it can become something that's a little bit frustrating. So to be able to see this, to be able to be, just the excitement around this, the potential for this league was something that I knew that I needed to, in my heart, I needed to follow. So I started my website, icehockeygazette.com.
Right.
And, it started off with just writing about the league as a whole. And then it kind of became a little bit more PWHL Ottawa specific. So, I did things like a full draft recap. So every player, I did a bit of a scouting report for every player. I was fortunate enough that that I was able to start this, the Rinkside Rundown podcast, which is just all things women's hockey. It's interviews with women's hockey players from around the world. And the Hockey News, the women's section of the Hockey News reached out to me and said, "Hey, what kind of coverage are you looking to provide?" And I told them, and they were like, "Hey, if you want to, why don't you contribute some articles to our website?"
Yeah, just like the league itself, a little bit, let's just start this without every single nut and bolt in place, but so much of it has come together. It sounds like the same story for your end of things. And you've gotten to interview, I noticed a few, but who've been the highlights so far, that without picking favorites, but just as far as good interviews or nice stories that you've had?
Yeah, I would say, obviously it's always going to be your first interview is one that you'll remember the most. And I was fortunate enough to be able to connect with Noemi Nubarova. She's a Czech national player. She's been doing incredible. If you're not paying attention or didn't know about the World Euro hockey tournament, it's definitely something. She's been outstanding in that tournament so far. But yeah, I would say like she's always going to be close to my heart because she was that first interview, and it was fantastic and super organic. I was very nervous. She was so accommodating, so happy, so enthusiastic. She really carried that. But I think, really for me, I think especially being in Ottawa, covering the Ottawa team, I would say having the chance to be able to connect with Sandra Abstreiter, their backup goaltender, and then Fanny Gasparich, who's been kind of third, fourth line, also doing really well in this case for Team Hungary. Being able to connect with them have been great.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I have a soft spot for the Czech players myself. I think they were a bit of an unknown factor, and 2 on Ottawa, 2 on Team Montreal, and 1 on Minnesota. And, they've been nothing short of, I guess I won't say a revelation, but, we knew that with Carla McLeod coaching them, they've taken off quite a bit internationally. And so the numbers have grown, and then the talent's grown, and their U18 team did beat Team Canada in the last championship there. But it's just they're so they're overcome from what I've seen with how much of an opportunity this is for them, and just as much as the North American girls are, but they're a little more used to maybe being on a bigger stage, whereas for the Czech players it's so brand new, and it's so refreshing to see that.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I think that being, Canadian, American, some of those typical nations, you're used to being on that big stage. You're used to, playing in the, whether it's for the championship or it's for gold or whatever, or what have you, rather, to have that opportunity for a nation such as Czechia to be on that stage and to be just doing so incredibly well. Not only is that great for them as individuals, but it's great also for the next generation, whether it's in that nation or another one, right? Where
Exactly.
it's, you may not have thought that you were a nation who could compete with a Canada, could compete with a Sweden, those sorts of Finland, those sorts of nations, to be able to compete with those, that speaks volumes to the future generations of women's hockey, and that's also a big part of the excitement there.
Yeah, yeah, it's good for the game. The more competitive, the better.
Mhm.
That's been one
Absolutely.
of the complaints, obviously, from way back. It's changed quite a bit, but even more so now. And I think the PWHL is just going to drive that even further as we see more international
Yep.
players come along.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. I agree. Yeah.
All right, so since we're in this international break week, let's talk about the couple of games that we have seen so far in the rivalry series. And they've both been wins for Canada. So the series is tied 3-3, correct? Going into Minnesota?
Yep. That's correct. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's couldn't have worked out better for just, making the games meaningful and exciting and maybe pulling off that reverse sweep. But the game was in Saskatoon and then on Friday in Regina. And what did you think of the players from the PWHL and how that looked when they got back on their international teams? It was a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of speaking more broadly on the rivalry series, I'll be honest, I did not see Canada coming back. I thought that they'd win a game or two, but I didn't think, based off of how they were performing against, or how the US was performing early on in the series when they went out to a 3-0 lead in the series, I thought for sure, maybe Canada could win one, maybe they could win two, but that ultimately it was going to be a US win. So to see them come back and in the way that they did, they shut out the Americans in Friday's game, 4-2 win on Wednesday's game, and then a 3-2 win on the previous Saturday's game.
Right.
The fact that they were able to do that, and last night's game was absolutely, that was the Canada that I think many people were expecting and were used to seeing play.
Yeah, it was fun to cheer. It had definitely had an Ottawa feel and a bit of a Toronto feel for repping my hometown team. Natalie Spooner's just been everything for Team Toronto, and Clarkey, like you said, with those breakaways, the previous game and not being able to score in Saskatoon was a bit of a downer for her, probably. But you could see she even did like the monkey off her back
Yeah,
thing when
yeah,
she
yeah. I love that
scored.
move. I love that move. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and she has been. We can talk about her for a second, since I've she's been appreciated, but maybe just a little bit overlooked as like a first level star with Team Canada. But I think she is that now in the PWHL. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say, and it's probably fair realistically when you're looking at the players like Poulin, Spooner, Nurse. It's easy to overlook a player such as Clark. But and she's shown this also with PWHL Ottawa, in that, she's someone that you can depend on in every situation, and she can absolutely create plays from nothing. And I think that's one of the things that we saw, from her play specifically over the past couple of games in the rivalry series. I think there was truthfully, probably some extra motivation because she's playing in
Right.
her home province. But I think that is just a glimpse as to the player that she is. Um,
It
and
could
I think,
also have been pressure too. Like sometimes players don't play as well with, friends and family and all the kids and the signs, but she seemed to just thrive on that and really played great.
yeah, absolutely. And I think but to that point, I think that's exactly what the kind of person that she is, that she can take that pressure. I've had many conversations with her. She's super chill. Like she is one of the most genuine people you will ever meet, both on and off the ice. She is so level-headed. And so those moments to her or for her, they don't necessarily get, at least they don't seem to get to her. Right. And I think that's one of the things that you saw in this game. You saw 2 games ago in the rivalry series that she was right on the door there, right? Like she
Yeah.
was she was knocking on the door to get a couple of goals. It was only a matter of time, and then she got them. And it's just because that's the kind of player, that's the kind of person she is. She's, uh, you know, Ottawa fans. She's endeared herself to this city.
Yes.
I can't even put into words how much she's endeared herself to this city. Um, but she's endeared herself to this nation with just her style of play is exactly what this next generation of Canadian players are going to, they're going to strive to be
Yeah.
the next Emily Clark. 100%, I promise you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting to me, that Brianne Jenner as captain and sort of the face of the team, we knew what she was about, and she's pretty much, played her typical Jenner game. Does she have one goal or more than one for Ottawa right now?
I do believe it's 1 goal. I'd have to
Yeah.
double check that. My apologies.
No,
But
no worries.
yeah.
I can pull that up. But along with, I spoke about, maybe the captains were feeling a little bit of pressure on all the teams, but Clark and of course Agia and some of these maybe second line players have really showed up for Ottawa, and I think that's really interesting. I don't know if that speaks to the pressure or just being given an elevated role. Laura Stacey in Montreal is another one that I'm just um, thrilled to see her do as well as she has. We knew she had that, but when they're playing with Team Canada, they're often, either on a second, third line or just not getting the power play minutes and things like that. So those are the kind of players that I'm trying to think of. Blair Turnbull, another captain who kind of had some troubles getting off the ground or off the ice in Toronto, but there's Natalie Spooner, and we thought it would be Sarah Nurse, and it's been kind of those secondary players that have just taken it and run with it, and that's a developing storyline, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify, yes, 1 goal, 2 assists for 3 points
Okay, yeah,
for Jenner.
for
But
Jenner, and
yeah,
she's been good, but like not as I mean, for Agia to have her 5 or 6 goals and kind of come out of nowhere, those are the storylines that I think are really making the league a must watch at this point. It's not just like, let's watch Poulin and Jenner and Nurse kind of score a hat trick every game over some of these secondary college players and things like that. It's been top to bottom, just great, great stories and great, great play from all of the players.
yeah, and I think that's something, great call out. I think that's something that maybe a lot of people aren't. I think maybe subconsciously they know that that's happening, but that secondary scoring, that depth scoring has been absolutely, I agree with you, one of the most underrated storylines of the league. Just you expected. I'm not going to ruin the surprise for later on, but you're expecting teams like Toronto to be even better than they are because they have the Spooners, they have the Turnbulls, they have these and Nurse.
Malte, Fast, Larocque, they're practically a
Yeah,
mini
exactly.
Team Canada. It's right. People
Yeah,
thought, well, that'll be
it's a
built
lot.
in. Yeah, that'll be built in chemistry. They'll come right out. you
Exactly.
know,
Yeah, and they are like a lot of fans have said they're just Team Canada. They're, you know, their GM is the Canadian GM, their head coach
coach. Yep.
is the head coach, right? So that you expected them to immediately have that chemistry, but then you're noticing teams like Ottawa, which don't necessarily have like the Jenner, sure, Mashmeyer, absolutely. Not to diminish some of those names, but they went really internationally. And I think that to your point, it's that you know, those maybe those smaller names that they just play a really solid game and they, you know, they give you that secondary scoring, they give you that depth scoring that's going to help you win games.
A topic I wanted to touch on, just since we're chatting about those secondary quote players, is maybe a surprise player or two throughout the league. You can go ahead and pick Ottawa. I'll try not to pick Ottawa to balance it out. But players that maybe we didn't know as much about, or just came out of the NCAA or Canadian University that we weren't able to see, that are becoming fan favorites. I mean, there's one obvious pick that you can go ahead and just get Alexia Gia out of the way, or we could just agree on her. But who has been one of those surprises for you besides maybe the ones we already kind of touched on?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go. Listen, I could talk about Ottawa all day long, and I'm inevitably going to loop back to them. But
Okay.
one of them is actually Victoria Bach, who
Okay.
you know, was recently signed with Toronto. I know that a lot of people who are more casual fans may not have known too much about her, but if you watch that game, her last game, which was her first game with Toronto, she played incredibly well. She was a factor in, I would arguably all areas of the ice. I thought she carried the puck well. She handled the physicality well. Um, you know, no, she doesn't have any goals yet or any points, but you know, last season with the with Team Scotiabank of the WHPA, she finished with 11 points in 20 games. She is someone that I think people may have slept on. I don't think people may have recognized her skill set as much as they should, and I think that she's going to be someone that will absolutely make some noise in the league. Now, obviously, as someone who covers PWHL Ottawa, I would say, you know, you nailed the first. My first pick with Ottawa would have been Agia for sure. You know, she's someone that she's a big physical forward. She loves to play that style of game, and I think now that we have that physicality in the league, I think this is something that like this play is right in her hand, and
Yeah.
the league is not ready for that. And
Yeah.
so with that, she's able to create that space to be able to create those opportunities for herself. And you've seen it so far this season.
Oh, for
Another
sure.
name I would throw out there, Amanda Boulier. She's a
Okay.
defender.
Yeah.
She's definitely on the smaller side, but she is a veteran presence. She's dependable, and you know she can take a beating, and she just picks
She
herself
has.
back. Yeah, she has. Yeah, yeah. She told
I
me
hope
the other
she's
day.
okay.
Yeah, she told me the other day, she's like, I woke up with some extra bruises, but I'm okay. I'm okay. But yeah, she just takes those hits, picks herself up. You're thinking for sure she's out of the game, picks herself up, carries on, continues being a top end defender. And she's been somebody who, you know, I could go on about any number of players, but that's a player that I think, you know, if you're not familiar with Boulier, absolutely make yourself familiar with her. She's again an incredible veteran presence on this team, and especially when you have a team that's full of a lot like this is the most diverse team in the league.
Right.
And there are a lot of younger players on this league to have that veteran presence alongside the likes of Mashmeyer and Jenner, I think will go a long way in terms of solidifying a championship team.
Great picks. I agree. And I have a couple of other, maybe even deeper picks. I don't know, maybe not a surprise at all, but one of mine is going to be Maureen Murphy from Team Montreal. I think she's on most people's radar by now, just by virtue of the fact that she was elevated to play with Marie-Philippe Poulin, which, takes a special kind of player to understand how to play. I think of Poulin a lot like Crosby, just able to do so much on her own. And yet if you find her the right line mates, not just to feed her so she can score, but that she can make plays with, that's the kind of player she is. She's 2 steps ahead, mentally seeing what's going to happen. So she's already in position, and to find someone to play with someone like that is a real art. So credit to Corey Chevry for sure. We could see it a little bit that the talent was there, but maybe we wouldn't have been brave enough to put a pure rookie up there, just by virtue of how intimidating it might be to play with someone like Poulin. And Murphy is straight out of NCAA, if I'm not mistaken. I think I know all these things, and then when it comes time, I'm not positive. I believe from Northeastern.
Yeah, so she's a graduate of Northeastern. So in her final season with Northeastern, 55 points in 33 games. Yeah, so fantastic.
So
Absolutely.
There's definitely a scorer there. So not like this is coming straight out of nowhere, but they just look like they've clicked. They look like they're enjoying playing with each other. She does just have that one overtime goal. And 7 assists, probably many of those on Poulin's goals. But she's just been, it's fun to watch players like that just start to shine and start to show confidence. So whenever they're on the ice together, I'm just enjoying it. And I think she's somebody definitely to watch out for. I don't know if they're giving out a Rookie of the Year, but to those players that haven't played in any kind of professional league yet, but she would definitely be on the radar for me. And then my other pick is someone actually similar to that from Team New York. It's Jade Downey Landry.
Ooh, good call.
Sneaky. Oh, Jade Downey Landry, yes. She did score a hat trick, but short of that, I think she has been one of the more noticeable players. Of course, Alex Carpenter is outstanding, so she's not anything like a sleeper pick. But Jade Downey Landry from McGill, right on, playing Canadian University hockey, and then playing 1 season with the Montreal Force in the PHF. And I don't know who scouted her and drafted her for New York, but credit to them because she's just been outstanding. I mean, 6 points in 9 games. Okay, she had the hat trick, but she could have had more. She's been in on so many of the plays. She is physical.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, like to her hat trick game, it's easy to obviously easy to pick that one because she got a hat trick. But I would say, not only she was incredible in that game, so not going to take anything away from that game. But what I would say is she's been a player that you see her every shift.
Yes.
Every shift she's on the ice, she makes an impact. She's able to drive the play. She looks so good through that neutral zone. She controls the puck. The way that her style of play. It's one of the reasons why New York is really high on my list in terms of I know not necessarily the results aren't necessarily there right now, but they have a really good structure, and she plays really well into that structure. And I think now that the season's continuing, you're going to start to see her on that score sheet more often. So absolutely. She's been a one of my stars when I'm watching those New York games. Absolutely one of my stars for sure.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at her. I didn't realize she was the captain. That's good to know. So she had those leadership qualities. So maybe that's why she was on the radar. She was, that set some scoring records and, not an unknown, but just not somebody that was in the PWHPA along with all those players or, just playing the 1 season in the PHF. She's just fun to watch. There are players that just play the game in a certain way that you can't help cheering for them. So She's one of
But
my favorites. Go ahead.
yeah, and this speaks absolutely to your point earlier about the secondary scoring and those names that you may not have necessarily known about prior to puck drop. And this is a perfect example of one of those players that it's not just about the big names. It's great to have those big names in this league, but those big names are being challenged by the secondary scoring by middle six forwards who are just making an impact. And Downey Landry is absolutely one of those players. So absolutely 100% support your decision. This was
Thank you.
great calls, great calls. Absolutely, both of them were great.
Yeah. And there are more, you can't just have a team of scoring, I want the puck superstar players. You need players that play on both sides of the puck and work hard. So we're seeing a lot of that come to fruition here. And it just shows hockey's just the best sport, period,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
stories like this.
Mic drop. Mic drop. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
feel it.
it. End of
Yeah.
podcast. Hockey's the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, let's take a quick look at the standings here, and just give our thoughts on what's gone on. You can see that things are pretty tightly packed here, which I love. I want to see this close. I don't want to see the Toronto team hanging off the edge of the bottom of the standings here. They've climbed back into it by virtue of playing a couple more games than Ottawa and Boston. But what are we surprised about here or not surprised? And what do you see coming up in the next, I guess, 2/3 of the season?
Yeah, so I think like I kind of spoiled the surprise earlier, but PWHL Toronto, like I expected them to be much higher in the standings. I think considering like we'd mentioned, I won't go on too much longer, but like we'd mentioned, they're a team with players who are used to playing with one another, and the fact that they're only now just climbing into the playoff picture was super surprising to me. The other thing to me is so again, it's surprising to me to see them, again, only now climbing into it. I would say, Minnesota has just been, you have to commend it. It's on one hand, you have to commend someone, the head coach, Ken Klee, in being able to come in. I think it was 10 days before the games or before the season started. He was brought in as the new head coach.
Yeah.
Um, and the fact that he was able to instill systems, instill a game, and then you're now seeing obviously the results speaking for themselves in that regard. I would say keep an eye, and I don't I
No, you
know
have to make a call.
I have to. So what I will say is this is going to absolutely sound biased, but I would say you have to keep an eye out for Ottawa, because I think Ottawa, but it's Ottawa. Keep an eye out for both Ottawa and Boston because they both have two more games remaining than the
Yeah.
rest of the league, right? And I would
Yes.
say again, I definitely lean a lot. I'm trying to do my best to be impartial to all of this, but truthfully, when you look at a team like Ottawa, uh, look at their schedule or look at their standings right now and look at their results. The fact that they've gone to overtime, yes, and we can get into that in a moment, and they haven't necessarily produced in overtime, but they've been able to at least get those points in every one of those games when they're not winning,
Right.
and they're only 1 point out of third in the
Right.
league,
Yeah.
right? And it's the same sort of thing again. Like I think Boston is going to be one of those teams. They have two games remaining and they're starting, sometimes these teams they take a little bit more time to come together, especially because there was such a short preseason and then we're immediately into the season. Some of these teams just take a little bit longer to get to find that gear, to find, that chemistry. But I truly think a team like Ottawa is absolutely going to be one of those teams to keep an eye on. And again, I am objective. I promise. I root for them, yes, but I am being objective in saying keep an eye out for Ottawa. But I would say my maybe we'll get into
Yeah,
our picks.
let's save
Yeah,
our final picks
yeah.
because
But keep an eye on for keep an eye out for Ottawa for sure.
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, banking points is never a bad thing, and there's some disappointment that you didn't get the 3 points and then even the 2 points. They've got to be just frustrated with that, but it's not for lack of playing well in 60 minutes and the luck is going to break their way. Overtime isn't all luck, but to lose 4 overtime games at this early in this early in the season has a little bit of a luck to it and some bad calls, let's face it, and just some bad breaks. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think once that evens out, you're right, they're gonna start to show up among the leaders. They have a top to bottom really good roster. New York is a team that I thought they had just such good vibes going on and kind of a carefree physical, because of Abby Rock, her personality, and Alex Carpenter leading the league in scoring. I thought they would be right up among the leaders, and it looks like, they're slipping a bit, but these things are going to happen. You're going to have stretches of 2-3 games where you suddenly find yourself in 5th place when a couple days ago you were in 2nd place, but that's the beauty of it. And but I'm a little worried about New York. I don't know why. It just looks like some of the lineup changes and shifting that they're doing hasn't really helped them. So if they get that back on track, I'll feel better about that. In my preseason video, embarrassingly enough, I picked Montreal to finish last. I will admit it. My reason at the time was simply that they were kind of top heavy, relying on Poulin and Desbiens as, the best of the best. And maybe their defense was going to have trouble transitioning. And I just thought maybe the flow of their games would present problems. And actually, that has been an issue, that their style of play has been kind of bend without breaking in their own zone and play a lot of time in their defensive zone defending, and then fast break with Stacy or great plays by Poulin, Murphy, Marchment, Anne-Marie Bette, players like that kind of break it open, score goals, and it's worked. I don't think that's necessarily a lasting plan strategically. So I might see them slipping a bit, not all the way to 6. I won't go that far, but I still like the look of Minnesota, and I still really like the look of Boston. I think you're right. It's taken them some time to blend some of their players, but that's not to say the talent isn't there. And I think now that they're finding it, I mean, Sophie Shirley looked great in the Rivalry series. Alina Mueller, if you've watched any of my videos, I really wanted her in Toronto, and she is right up there in the scoring leaders. And Hillary Knight with just 1 goal and a shooting percentage of something like 2%, she's going to be fine. So I think they are really going to be strong. I think Toronto might finish about where they are. I think they've got some holes in their lineup. So unless Sarah Nurse really starts to shine and Turnbull, steps up a little bit more. I'm a big Renata Fast fan. I think she's been fine. She needs to keep her end tidy. So, they've had some blunders and some odd moments, but hopefully they'll be right there in the thick of things. It's so hard to pick anybody last, You can pick reasons why they're all going to do well, but somebody's got to be at the bottom. So with that, let's pick right now if we have to, and this will be recorded, but we won't, lose money or hold anybody to it. But if you had to pick who will come out as the first PWHL league champion, drum roll.
First of all, I'm going to say Ottawa will make the playoffs. But what I will say is that I think Boston will be the first winner.
Reasons why?
I am just I mean, I don't know how much time you have, but I would say, with their goaltending, New York, I get it. I'm a huge fan of Schroeder. I think goaltending in terms of who's the best overall goaltender. I know that the results right now are it's Montreal right now with
Yeah.
with Julie being the best goaltender in the league,
Yeah.
but she's only played 3 games. I think the best goaltender is Schroeder for sure. But I just love, when you have a captain like Hillary Knight, you have an Ottawa native and as an assistant with Rattray. I just think that they're going to find it and they're going to, I'm thinking about Lauren Gable. You're looking at even like Soderberg. As soon as I actually, there was a part of me that wanted Ottawa to draft
I
Soderberg.
wanted her as well.
Yeah, so I just think that overall, yes, it's taking, and Sophie Shirley, sorry, I shouldn't dismiss her as well. I literally
Oh,
could
I
go on.
know.
It's like every
Top to
player, it's
bottom. I know
yeah, top to bottom. I
they
just
drafted
think,
so well. They
yeah,
really, after the draft, everybody was like, whoa, the
yeah.
talent was incredible.
Yeah, it's just taking a little bit longer to find that chemistry, but I think, give it a game or two more, especially with this time with the international break. I would say give it a little bit more time, and this team's really going to take the next step and just absolutely. It could go either way between New York and Boston, but I think Boston will take it this season.
Oh, you think New York will be right up there, like in the finals? That's interesting too.
I think again, Schroeder is gonna absolutely she's gonna carry this team. I mean, not like also the Carpenters, who I think is gonna win the scoring, whatever they call this scoring championship, scoring trophy. I think
The
she's
Haley
gonna win it.
Wickenheiser Trophy or the
That's the last I heard.
maybe the
Yes,
Jana Hefford
yeah.
Trophy.
But yeah, so I think she's gonna win it, but I think it's gonna be a good competition for the both of them down the
Okay.
stretch.
Well, that's interesting. Like I said before, I could be wrong, but I think New York is gonna keep on struggling a little bit, kind of around. It's just so hard to pick anybody at the bottom, but it's gonna be close. As trite as it might be, that was going to be my pick as well, Chris. That is who I picked in my preseason, so at least maybe I could feel good about that. Like I said, after the draft, seeing the talent that they were able to get with, people were surprised they grabbed Rattray, Sophie Jakes, Alina Mueller, Lauren Gable. They were like, what? Megan Keller back on D. And it just looks like there are no holes. I mean, I think taking Rattray just broke people's hearts and they're like, okay, just give it to Boston then. Because she's a secret weapon, and when the stakes get high, she's going to come through. As Alina Mueller, I want to look at her game by game because it took her a while to get her first goal, but she is warming up nicely, and I think she is going to be among the league leaders.
Mm.
And like we said, with Hillary Knight not showing up that much yet, as soon as she makes an impact, I think that's going to be almost an unstoppable team. I think Lauren Gable is so sneaky good. I wish she would get some attention from Team Canada.
Yep.
But I will also have to go with Boston. For me, I've said in a couple of videos, the factors that I think are going to matter so much in, like you said, the shortened season are goaltending and team chemistry. So if Corrine Schroeder gets hot, she could carry them all the way. The same with someone like Mashmeyer, Debian. Again, I think that's where Toronto has a bit of a soft spot in that, Kristen Campbell just hasn't done that other than in college hockey. She hasn't been the number one that's had to carry a team for a lot of games. So she's a little bit rusty when it comes to that. But I could see Erin Frankel doing that as well. And if they get their team chemistry down, I think it's Boston for sure.
Yep.
And I hope Montreal is there. Just, I think a Boston Montreal final would be absolutely incredible to see. Knight and Poulin and Debian and just superstars top to bottom. But those are our picks. So we'll come back. We'll revisit it later if we need to make major adjustments. Hopefully, nothing like injuries or, anything like that affects it. But that's the way we see it finishing. And any final thoughts on just what to watch when the league gets back into action? There are a lot of games coming up when they hit the ice again. I think 5 or 6 games pretty quickly in the 3 or 4 days upcoming.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like, so we're now waiting until it looks like Valentine's Day. Ooh,
Yeah,
nice. Okay,
two
great.
games on Wednesday, then Friday, then 2 games on Saturday, and a game on Sunday. Like it's going to be fast and furious. But anything that you're watching for, especially?
Yeah, so I would say, this is going to be there, overall, I would say just being able to watch PWHL games again is just going to be so incredible. It feels like it's been a lifetime. We had to wait so long to get them,
I
and now
know.
we got a taste of it, and now we have to wait again for another, I don't know, I'm not great at math, but like another 4 days, 5 days, 4 days. It feels like a lifetime between these games. But I would say one of the things that, when the league comes back on Valentine's Day, and on Valentine's Day, Ottawa takes on Minnesota, and that's going to be an opportunity. At least, again, I don't mean to always be kind of lean towards Ottawa. It's a natural thing for me, but this is their first opportunity to be able to play on NHL sized ice, right? Like we had
Okay.
there was the Sens skills competition, which we had a few players participating in that, and Watts, Harmon, Jenner, and Clark. But they've not had this stage to play on because
Right.
they're playing in Minnesota in XL Energy Center. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. But in terms of games, we're looking at that, like there's a back-to-back between
Yeah.
Ottawa and Minnesota. That New York Boston game on Saturday. That's one that I'm looking at. I just talked about how I thought that those were a couple of the teams that I was looking for to take the season, and they're playing against each other next Saturday. So that's one of those games that I'm definitely looking forward to for sure. What about you?
Well, same. Even I would say I'm a fan of all the Canadian teams. So whenever the Canadian teams play the American teams, I love them all. But the Ottawa, Minnesota, I think is going to be a really, really good test. You know, to see if Minnesota has really maybe slipped a little bit back to the pack, which I think they probably have. I think their built-in chemistry is still there, but the other teams have caught up chemistry wise. And I would love to see Ottawa pull out a couple of wins and for it to be back to back, like a home and home, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't go to overtime. Carla
That's
McLeod, our hearts are with you. You just keep doing what you're doing. Things will bend in your favor. I think those, like, I'm excited to watch those games. I will be there early. I will try to, early on my YouTube feed, just chatting and seeing what's up with folks. Those are going to be exciting. And then of course, Montreal, Toronto. I don't strongly cheer for either one, but just that last matchup they went to was a shootout. So there's going to be some revenge in the air, but this is going to be on Toronto's home ice. So that's going to be a great one to see. And then you've got the Minnesota Montreal, which was the last game was super competitive with Elaine Truly standing on her head in that one. So, I mean, there are no bad games. It's not like there's, a weakling against a powerhouse. The games are all really close, and that's the way we like it. All right, Chris. Well, I guess that's going to wrap it up for us. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a blast. You're welcome anytime. And we'll also check out your Ringside Rundown podcast. What's coming up on there?
Yeah, so most recently, I don't want to necessarily give away the surprise of the next guest, but
Okay.
she's a great one. Definitely, she's a former goaltender. current mental performance coach, someone that you definitely want to tune in for. She has some great insights. Most recent episode was with Emily Rickwood. She's currently in AIK. She's a defender in the Swedish league. Fantastic interview. It's on YouTube. It's also wherever you get your podcasts. Great interviews coming up.
Wonderful. And I will put those links in the description on all the platforms where you're listening to this. Chris Sinclair again, and just doing some great coverage, especially of PWHL Ottawa, but all things women's hockey. So thanks, Chris, and hopefully we'll see you again soon here, but enjoy the hockey.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. You're welcome on my podcast anytime you want, and I definitely want to come back for sure. This has been a great time.
Thank you. Always fun to talk hockey. All right, that'll wrap it up, folks. Enjoy your P-Dub, and we'll see you in the next episode.
PWHL Puck Drop Podcast.